Animal Services as an advisory committee meeting to order. Um, in an in an effort to provide, I don't need to read that. Open session. Public comment. The advisory committee takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the advisory committee at this time. The advisory committee may request an item be placed on a future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? Okay. Moving on, item 2, consideration of approving the November 17th regular meeting minutes.
I motion that.
Has everyone had a chance to review them? Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Schulte to approve the minutes as they're presented. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries with unanimous. Item 3A, discussion and possible action related to the monthly shelter numbers for November 2016.
I'm looking at December, so that threw me off. James Florida City Shelter. They are November 16 numbers. For the month of November, we had a total of 370 enter the facility. That's a pretty low number. We want to see that continue to go down, but that's a big thing right there. When only 370 come in, when we're normally used to 500, 600, 700. We adopted out 151. Again, that was a excellent number. Return to owner 32. We had a live release rate, which, for lack of better terminology, a 29% kill rate and a 71% live release rate. So November 16 marked the 9th month that we went without putting an adoptable animal down. And of the biggest numbers here, the most amazing to me, as I do track these daily and monthly and take pride in them or not. I have taken pride in the numbers since then, but the biggest one to me was that we only euthanized 159 animals. That is amazing. That's probably the lowest in the history of the shelter to ever be euthanized. Of that number, 121 were cats. So we'll decipher that in a different slide. We did have a big leftover number of 208. When you go to a lesser kill, that's what happens. And that's where we're at for the end of the month of November. We ended up with 208 left over. That's a little high. That's usually in the higher hundreds, 170, 180. So there's about 35, 40 animals heavy in that capacity. And we had 6 citizens use the clinic. Any questions or concerns?
No, I mean, those seem to be going around the right direction, so.
Okay, we'll move on. Euthanasia for November. Obviously, the cats were the big thing. And I want to stress, for the last majority of the months, just for clarification, I know sometimes we get information overload. Cats are always in the 70 to 80 percentile range of what we euthanize. They are in the feral categories. They are in the sick categories. I've been working diligently to try to eliminate that number from us having to, be charged with that from a euthanization standpoint. But I think for transparency and clarity's sake, that is what it is. But I want people to understand our euthanization number is usually 70 to 80% in the cat category. Dogs, we did 37. Those are bites, those are rabies, those are aggressive. There was some sick. We had a wildlife of 1. You can see to the right of that screen, 18 were aggressive, 5 were in bite quarantine. Ferals, 89. Rabies test was 1. That's a death due to a severing of a head for submission. Injured, there was 5. Sick were 38. You can pretty much put your sick and your feral together. I think that's about what equals out to almost the 121. We did have 3 owner requests, and again, 0 for time and space.
So on the cats, maybe one thing you could do so you could show the public that you're not, you know, to help not penalize you, but break it down for your euthanization numbers for the month is simply have a separate subcategory beneath the species right there on the screen, and then put feline and then or cats, and put and break down why the numbers were broken down, and just leave the overall reasons on the right hand side of the screen there.
Sure.
That maybe be a way of helping defer that from the actual numbers on the screen.
And absolutely, we have that current process. The numbers that I submit to upper management does break it down. It's a very convoluted report. And usually when someone asks for some, I know there's a couple of agencies out there or some proactive animal agencies that request our numbers. I don't give those off until you guys approve the minutes, so they're always a month behind. But they have a little more broken down category as well. I just wanted to stress the fact that month in, month out, it seems to be in the high 70, 80 percentile of euthanizations that occur at the shelter are in the feral cat category. So, because people see 159 deaths, and you just lump everything together: the puppies, the good-looking dogs, and blah blah blah, the fluffy cats, and that's not the case. These are mange, these are cancers, these are feline leukemias, these are ferals, these are biters, these are true blue feral animals, and they account for about 80% of our euthanization rates. Any other questions or concerns?
The cats that come in, the 121 that was euthanized, are you see the majority of those come in as they've been trapped by the public and brought to you?
Yes, we do. We get a lot of injured in that category. There's a lot of ferals that run the streets and don't make it across 8 lanes of Bryant. So, a broken leg or something like that. But the majority are trapped. There's some concerns currently in the community with our trap and release program in the feral category that we've been recently funding, and probably something we need to bring up at a later date and time to discuss. That ordinance that was put in place, and some updates that need to occur to help the shelter from a perceptive standpoint of the community. So lots of education that needs to go on in that capacity. But yes, they are typically trapped animals that are brought to us. When we go to a scene or someone calls us for that, obviously the first thing we check is for a tattoo or a notched ear. And if it's either of those two, then obviously we're releasing it pretty much at the stop sign within its community. But there's problems with that, logistical problems. Some of these cats are being caught, and the public is, taking it upon themselves to go relocate them. And the colonies, without knowing where they're at, who they are, pose a very logistical problem for the staff and the citizens as well. So, in a perfect world, if it's tatted and not steered, it gets dumped at the stop sign and it's going back to its current colony. But there's just so much to that that's not happening from a proactive standpoint. I think that's causing some confusion.
Okay. Is that that may be something we need to look at on a future agenda
definitely
item,
something
and
we need to
maybe
look
look at how microchipping might play a role in helping you better identify what colonies they go to.
Sure. I mean, just this week we've dealt with 3 issues that were very time-consuming and erroneous on everybody's behalf. So we're just trying to get better at that to help promote the intent of the ordinance, which I think is to lessen the population. But I think some things need to be brought forth that where the population has been lessened, they have implemented that we don't.
Okay. And then bite quarantine, I just have one more question on that. Is that usually owned pets that are not redeemed after a bite, or are those strays?
No, in a stray bite, that guy usually isn't caught. It's
Right.
a stray, and it bit, and it's gone. So it's a reactive situation when we get to the victim. These are typically almost always owned and not redeemed. Every now and then, there's a stray that for some reason he bit or she bit because of fear, or she was scared or he was scared. And we do end up with that. But the majority of these are people that just are going to give up that animal and never intended to pull them out.
So their pet
Of the shelter.
bites, you quarantine it, they never come to redeem it, and then it's euthanized at the taxpayer's expense.
Absolutely.
So
After
that's
sitting
something
there 10
I'd kind of
days.
like to look at too on a future agenda item, is how we handle those and maybe put that responsibility back on the pet owner.
You know, we looked at that as a staff. You know, at the end of the day, I've got 10 days plus invested in that animal, and I think that's why I exist. However, that is a burden, could be a financial burden, because our rabies room is constantly always full. There's a zillion bites in this town. There's a zillion scratches, and most people will, for monetary reasons, quarantine with us than the private sector. But at the end of the day, when I'm either putting those down, you know, in this case, you're looking at 50 days of food, water. You don't vet. The good thing about that is you don't do anything. You don't do an inoculation whatsoever during a quarantine period. But we have time and effort and expenses involved in housing that animal, only to just euthanize it later on down the road. So we were looking at possibly a prepayment type of situation from the individual. If we bring this animal in, here's the 10 days of quarantine, this is what you're going to be charged, pay for that, and you need to come pick it up in 10 days, versus the aftermath of 10 days of quarantine. It's $10 a day. Typically speaking, as reports have shown, we don't ever have or hadn't had a rabies case scenario come to fruition, which is a good thing. But in almost all these instances, these animals are not inoculated from rabies, yet alone parvo or anything else. So when the person leaves, they incur the processing fee of the inoculations, the rabies fee. They're hardly ever not microchipped, so there's another $13. By the time you leave, it's a $200 expense. And so people are just foregoing that $200, going and getting another dog, and we kill it and move on. If they didn't prepay for it, we could sever the head at that point, that day, and eliminate 9 days of housing, 9 days of kennel space, 9 days of anything else, and send it off to the state, because that's a free charge that the state provides for anybody, a veterinarian locally or myself. And we'd save some money in that capacity, because if you look at the reports every month, there's always some sort of euthanization repercussion from that category. But there's a ton. Every cage is full every month in that capacity.
Well, and my concern on that, in that category, is just that you've got owners that are in violation of several state laws and ordinances, and so then they just get to walk away and abandon their animal, and the animal is destroyed because of it. So I really would like to look at that on another agenda item and see if there's something that we can do to help address that and put that responsibility back on the pet owner.
Absolutely. I would love to discuss that specific action.
Another thing is, even though the test itself doesn't cost any, the actual submission of shipping the specimen to the state does actually incur, but it's still actually cheaper to do the submission than it is to actually have it there for 10 days, unfortunately. I mean, that's
Sure.
economics too. Not trying to be cold, but it's sometimes when you look at these, this is just more of economics on a large scale and a limited budget. So I think that's more important that a lot of people know too, just for those that read this or listening to us later on.
Absolutely, and the numbers also show, we did a survey about this particular issue due to some other concerns that were brought up earlier this summer, and your local shelter is probably the busiest at submissions, which means he's exactly right. There's a lot of victims without an animal that they know of or that we've been able to catch. There's a lot of exposure issues. There's a lot of, your top 5 rabid animals. If your child was exposed to one of those by touching it or something else or another, you're incurring that $40 expense for us to sever the head and to send off. It has nothing to do with the test itself. It's the courier fees that he's talking about. We do a lot. We do a ton of them. So unfortunately, the victim not only has potentially a bite to deal with in the emergency room and the medical expenses, but then for us to send that off, it's a $40 expense out of their pocket. So that does become an issue. There's a misconception that the city budgets for those submissions, and we don't. We have eaten a lot of them, and I will continue to eat a lot of them because we buy in the fact that there's some people that were a victim and do not have the $40. But if we were to buy every single one, provide that fee for every single body, I'd have to add another line to our budget and really watch that annually and budget for it. So it could get very expensive.
If they're current on their vaccinations and there's a bite, are they still allowed to home quarantine?
No, that's another misconception that the ordinance isn't well written in that capacity. We probably need to look at that as well. But there is one last sentence that says, the shelter director, in that case, it'd be Bob's decision, not mine. That's a joke. It's my decision. I was just trying to pass the buck on to him. He has the discretion to allow that. And we studied this. It was a great option. But the problem with it is kind of due to our animal population in this town. There's a lot of irresponsibility that goes on with home quarantines. The first two that I did were out in the streets the next day, and both rebit additional neighbors within the community. And we decided this is not an option anymore, nor I think it should be. I think the local vet, whatever he charges to quarantine your animal is what you need to pay, or you come pay me for the quarantining of that, because people weren't adhering to the requirements of quarantine. And that's been a big issue of even the local vets have asked, for us to allow that. And there's a reason for that, and it's because of, at the end of the day, I've got to protect the citizen from rabies. I am the local rabies control authority, and all that means is I'm the guy that makes sure the investigation is done right, the outcome is done right, up to advising the victim of, medical requirements.
But you know what? There are special circumstances.
There is.
Where we can allow a home quarantine, but it'll be special.
We're straying
Okay.
from the agenda. You guys need to get back to the discussion of the numbers and away from this. We can bring this up at another time.
Okay, yeah. if
It
we
has been
just-
allowed.
Okay, if we can just put that on the agenda. I just had questions on those numbers.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions on the numbers as they're presented?
Not at this time.
Okay. Moving on then, our next agenda item is the discussion.
Did you want to cover the trends real quick?
Oh.
These are the annual trends as we started when the reorganization under the different department, and you can see that these numbers show the adoptions are up and the euthanasia are down. So that's what these two slides were for. I believe Dr. Schultz asked for an annual. I kind of went back to the beginning of our tenure, and that's what these numbers are.
Those look great. And it
Really
actually
do.
gives a way to actually visibly see it on a graph.
And but basically, whether you agree or disagree with the reorganization, if you're an animal lover, you're going to love these numbers.
We would hope so. I mean, they're pretty good numbers, and it's tough, to get there, and that's for anybody that runs this shelter. But these are numbers we're proud of, and we've worked hard to get there. And I think that some of the community support that we've had behind us have contributed to us getting these type of trends. We look forward to that same type of continuation. I have reservations and fears, but we'll need to put that on other agenda items because of our current veterinarian situation and what we went through and everything else. There is concerns and fears for these numbers to stay where they're at. So I know we got a semi-packed house, and I'd like to discuss those at a later date and time.
Okay. Looks good. Any other questions or comments on the numbers?
You want to have
Okay.
a public comment?
Do you have any public comment? Okay.
I don't know where it fits in, but James brought up, the veterinary situation. Who's taking care of the animals now?
I guess we'll need to discuss that on another agenda. We can put that on the January agenda because I think that has just happened. So it'll give you some time to let us know what the plan is to move forward. If there's no other questions or comments on the numbers, then we're going to move on to item 3B, the discussion and possible action related to the request for proposal to contract with local nonprofits to manage shelter animal adoptions. I am at this point going to recuse myself and turn this over to our co-chair.
Okay. As you guys know, we've had numerous attempts at meeting to kind of get this clarified and everything else. I just want you to know that This was a RFP, a request for proposal, very common in cities and government. We decided, or maybe it was me, I decided a long time ago, this is nothing new. I've talked to Ms. Marcelli about this back in the day. I've talked to you guys about the shelter getting out of the adoption business, only because I don't see manpower coming my way. And it's not a primary mission of a shelter, not for the city of San Angelo shelter. It never has been. We've created that primary mission in absorbing a function from over here and creating an adoption coordinator. And, I think we did very, very good at it. But overall, when I look at the entirety of my shelter, I see this mass population out there of people that aren't being served in a animal control capacity. Not to say that I don't care about adoptions or that they're not important. They're very important. But early on, I had talked about that as I dissected this new entity that I absorbed and maladopted and said I'd go run. And I still feel that it's something that we need to get out of in order for me to utilize people in a different capacity. But again, to serve this huge population of citizens, thousands of people that don't care about my population, don't care about my euthanization rate. They want us to be there when they call us for animal control. And under my regime, I've never been able to do that. Never. I've been very reactive, very slow, very late. And yes, all this other stuff has gotten a lot better in my professional opinion. And I wished I could have 4 more employees so that I would not have to go out for an RFQ or an RFP, whatever you want to call it. This one's an RFP. But we did. We finally discussed from an upper management standpoint the process that we wanted to undertake. And we sent out bids to 5 people. We also emailed out that bid. And we tried to bring it to you guys, which hopefully now that we have a quorum, we're bringing it forth so that we can get everything out in the open for your approval or denial to move forward to take it to council in hopes of negotiating an adoption process for this city so that I can get out there and serve the rest of this humongous population that I think is hurting. So with that being said, before we start anything, we did send this out to 5 different people. The recipients of this RFP were Lone Star Doberman Rescue, 8316 Asta Court, Benbrook, Texas, and they were emailed at lonestardobmanrescue@gmail.com. They did a no bid via email. Yellow Rose Animal Rescue, 4712 Chaparral Road, Big Spring, Texas. Email yellowroseanimalrescue@gmail.com. Mail was returned. Texas GSP Rescue, P.O. Box 17802, Austin, Texas. Email gsp911tx@yahoo.com. Mail returned. Concho Valley Paws, 4001 Sunset Drive, number 1072. Email jenny@conchovalleypaws.org. Submitted a bid. Diamond Dotson Rescue, 1641 Bear Creek Road, Kerrville, Texas. cmc@co.ker.texas.us. No bid via email returned. Okay, and that's what we did. We created this RFP that we built and said, this is what we want you people to bid on and want you people to see if you could offer us. And if you can offer us this service, at what cost to the city of San Angelo? Because it would be irrelevant if I couldn't pay for it. It would be irrelevant if I didn't think we could get there financially. But so we didn't know. We sent it out to 5 people that we do business with, and we got one back. Some didn't email back at all. Some emailed no bid. Basically, what we're wanting this contract to do is
Let's go next 2 slides, if you want to go next slides.
okay.
Well, it outlines the
Outsourcing the animal adoptions is what we want them to do. And again, animal control is the primary mission. I think everybody in here would agree that that is what a shelter's existence is really based upon. That's the history of a municipal shelter, and that's not changed. Rabies is a disease that can kill somebody, and I think every shelter that sets up under a municipal umbrella sets up to control the animal issues for the majority of the population of the city within the confines of where they have jurisdiction. and adoptions are secondary missions. Benefits of outsourcing, we feel that by outsourcing this opportunity, we will get people that, obviously we went with rescues because they are the pros in this capacity. They've exceeded us in tenure. We figured that we'd get more of an expertise approach from them. We get 2 for 1 as far as the manpower increase. So to me, that's huge. And like I explained last meeting, 1 or 2 of these people that I could repurpose are 2 and 3 people in the private sector. They would take 2 or 3 people's jobs. That's how good these people are. But currently, they're inundated with this one process that could be 2 or 3 for me. So that's 2 for 1 from a contract standpoint, but it's about a 4 to 1 for me internally from being able to repurpose a staffer that's currently doing that. So the request for proposal requirements is to provide an adoption service per current process and fee schedule. Fee schedule is the big thing there. Fees aren't going to change. When this person comes in and adopts an animal, it's $85 per ordinance. I can't change that without council involvement or approval. So the city's going to capture that $85, not the participating vendor or I guess in this case, rescue group that performs the adoption. Microchipping is the same. They will do that. They will perform that function. They will schedule spay, neuter, and surgery, and they will also ensure that the rabies vaccinations are either performed or up to date and current on this animal. Because ironically, we do get some in the adoption world that do have a current microchip, and they are current on their inoculation. So that's going to be performed by that particular rescue agency. And of course, they'll assist customers with Pet Point navigation. I want to warn everybody today that Pet Point is really getting user-friendly or not user-friendly. I was advised that as of the 15th of this month, because I'm the freebie, they're no longer going to be able to host our pictures on the website for particularly lost and found people. Internally, you'll still sit at my kiosk and you can see the pictures. Again, possibly another agenda item, but that's coming our way because we're freebies. We're not on a purchase type of system with them. So, and they have been difficult in many times there to deal with. But again, we run a $1.2 million facility with a free software. So go figure. But that's where we're at with that. They'll match potential animals with customers' needs. Again, I think this is where any of the rescues that have been involved longer than us in the adoption process are just better suited to do that. They have maybe a more intimate process that they can deal with than say we do. Since I can focus on other issues now, the 12 people standing at the counter, 7 of those may be animal control issues coming in for citations, coming in for something else. There would be more time spent is our goal and our hope to better make the adoption process. One of the big things that I would always, I've been trying to do since I got there, I believe in this one right here, is follow up with customer contact after adoption. I think that is huge. I really, really do. Kind of a survey, a post-survey. I love those. When I get them from Lowe's or I get them from my dentist office, I fill them out, and I really give back that feedback because I think that's a great way to really solidify that entire process that you just performed for this customer. And it's just that. It's a customer satisfaction survey. But it also lets me know if I'm doing good or not. We'll get some that are just hateful, and that's okay. We look at those. Bob and I really have looked at those. We've performed one in the past to diffuse some outcry, negative outcry or accusations or something, and they were in our favor, very strongly in our favor. So I love customer service satisfaction surveys. They're going to offer basic animal obedience, kindling, and housebreaking. This is another thing from the adoption standpoint that I've looked at and thought, God, if we could just repurpose some spaces back there to help people, especially with puppies, some obedience, some kindling, some housebreaking. It's very nice to go to someone's home and you could tell that dog to get in its kennel and it gets in there at a certain time, or you're not worried about your carpet getting urined on or defecated on. We don't do that. We offer, if it is, it's rare. It's because it's 20 till 6 and there's no one else in there and somebody posed the question. I'd rather be proactive in that capacity. We want to provide mandatory counseling for pet owners wishing to drop pets off at the shelter. Again, we started this, but as you know, as we house animals and go to a lesser kill rate, and as we worry about how many adoptions we're going to send out for that month, this is one of them things that's very important that just gets forgotten by staff. They don't have time to sit there and go, I need you to move to this office over here so we can discuss, you know, possibly rehoming this animal, possibly finding out some resources that you might need to keep this animal. We don't do that. We tried it, but it's inundating out there at that place. So certain things just fell off of it. This is one that fell off of it. The first item was one that fell off of it. We used to follow up. We can't do that anymore. We don't have that kind of time. We'd like to also do coordination of weekend off-site adoption events. We don't want our trailer to end up with dust on it. We want it to stay clean and fresh and ready to go. We've been very successful with off-site adoptions, very, very successful. And I don't want to see that stop. If anything, I want to see that grow, possibly even use it to service other communities. Ironically, there is communities that do not have dog population problems. So maybe we could better use that trailer to get on the interstate and haul 30 of ours to somewhere that doesn't have our problem. So we definitely don't want that trailer to get dusty. We want it to be used. I'd like to put some new tires on it by this year, next year, so we know it's gotten used. Any questions, concerns, issues that I can possibly help you to hopefully take action on this item?
Well, I know this committee set the long-term goal of becoming no-kill, and I do think that this is what needs to happen. We obviously have to increase our adoptions, and we really have to have good animal control and get this community to be responsible pet owners. And I'd love to see y'all cracking down on those backyard breeders, et cetera. So I love this because I think that this is a win-win, and I do think that this will help us get to that no-kill, just be another little part of the puzzle in getting there. So I
want to stress on that note, you know, I go back to Austin no-kill. That's exactly what this thing is. This is not new. This is something Bob just thought of at 3 a.m. or something I thought of at 2 p.m. And we just said, hey, let's get out of the adoption business. This is very old and tried and tested and proven in other cities, but that's exactly what you get to. I can't get to a no-kill by myself. I just can't. I can't get to, not with everything else that I'm doing. We've been very blessed and very fortunate and very tired to get 9 months of 0 adoptable animals down. We are not on an I-35 corridor. We don't have 90 local rescues. I can go on and on and on. We're not a metropolis area, but we do have the ability to merge into that nuance of getting municipal shelters getting out of this. We don't send someone off for training to adopt. We don't keep up with marketing. No one's certified to do this. It's an afterthought if a municipal shelter is currently adopting animals. Are there some good ones? Yes, we are a good one. Lots of people have called in my business and asked, well, how are y'all doing this? What did y'all do differently? Blah, blah, blah. The problem for me as the guy that runs that place is the overall humongous population that is not served currently under the animal control world. And I'm not conceding, we're not giving up, but we're taxed. Go look at my staff, they're tired. We've got infrastructure issues that have been on the books for a long time that need to get dealt with. We have all kinds of things, and then we still have to no-kill and we have to adopt. It's tough. So this is nothing new. This is something that we thought of, and I think the shelters that are currently done it have thought outside the box. Let's concede to an organization that should be better than us. And at the end of the day, if they're not, man, I can just stroke a pen and it's over. I get back into doing what we're doing. There's no loss at all for the city of San Angelo in this capacity, despite who the vendor is or what where we go with that. But this is not new. Please remember that. There is tons of municipalities that have done this and have foregone their adoption process with a rescue group of whatever sorts, and they're very successful. I mean, look up Austin No Kill. Look at it. Look at its origination and how it started and what it's become. Wonderful place.
And today we're voting on the idea. Do we like the idea of the city doing this? We're not voting anything to do with pause. I mean, this is really, do we like this idea? Is that correct?
It hasn't anything to do with any rescue.
Right.
It's the concept of you, the board members, allowing us, the shelter workers, to bring forth an item to you to hopefully get your blessing on and get out of the adoption business. I mean, the vendor, the whoever it is totally irrelevant to me. Because again, at the end of the day, my staff has the same concerns. Well, man, we've been pretty successful. What if they don't come in here and do the numbers? Numbers don't lie. I'm going to come report them to you every single month. Somebody on there is going to go, man, all of a sudden the trend just went down. What's going on? And if there's some stuff that we can overcome to get better because of logistics or because of whatever, but I'll be more than happy to do that. But at the end of the day, Bob and I have the discretion to decide this wasn't right for the city of San Angelo. And unlike the history of that shelter, lots of things have not been tried. I think we've been burdened to some capacity for being outside the box thinkers, and we've realized some of these items that we've done have been pretty fast, and we've paid for going that fast. But the whole time we were listening to, a few here and maybe not appreciated by a few over here, and the entire population was in the middle of this. And this is who I want to serve today. I've proven that we can go to a zero adoptable euthanization facility with the infrastructure problems that we have. We've already proven that. We've already proven that we can get to record number of adoptions. Now I want to prove to this community, because if we don't get out of this, then we're not in harmony with our current ordinances on the books. There's no sense in having a spay-neuter ordinance if I'm not out there tagging people for having danglers on their animals. There's just no need for that. So
The answer is, yeah, what we want from you is buy-in for the concept. The details will be handled later, but if you think it's a good idea to go forward, we will pursue this option.
From my standpoint, I'm in agreement that the main purpose of the shelter or animal control in any city or town is to actually do the animal control mission, which is rabies quarantine, rabies control, rabies vaccination certifications, enforcement of local laws and ordinances, which due to right now it's difficult to do, if not impossible in some locations, just due to low manpower, just being overwhelmed. So I think that as an idea, this would be good. If in future reference in 6 months from now, the execution is not done well or not done to the satisfaction of y'all or the committee, that we can revisit it and come back. But I feel that y'all reached out to as many organizations that are local that I know of that are, like y'all said, at the last event, we're in a 501c status based on some requirements in the RFP. And I think y'all did your due diligence. So I say submit it and let's see what happens. It cannot go any, but it can only improve. If not, and then we can go back to what we're doing.
And these will be annual contracts, so, and we'll be looking at it, and we can, within 30 days, we can sever the contract if we need to for whatever reason. So there's options there.
And it opens up for, if there's someone who needs it better, it comes along.
Exactly right. And, I mean, it's something we want to try.
Yep.
Is it worth trying? I believe it is.
I think it's great. I see this as progress, so I think this will help move us in the right direction. Comment from the board?
What you said a while ago, Bob, I mean, are you going to bring it back to us to present to city council with their contract and all that, or is it
We'll
just
show
up to
we'll show you
y'all
the contract. We'll work the details, and we'll show you the contract.
after it's already
After, because
been?
at that point, we don't have to go back to council at that point. So we'll let you see it, take a look at it, let you chop on it if you need to, so make sure we don't miss anything. Get your advice, again, that's what we're asking for, is your advice, and then we'll go from there.
So you're wanting us to say, okay, today, so you can start with contracts and stuff?
No.
that they can
This is
take it
for
to
us,
city
we're asking for your advice on this concept. So we can go to council next month. We'll let them know what you all have said. If you're supportive of it, council will be more likely to allow us to pursue this option.
To me, that's approving it, which I do approve it, but that's what it is.
Sure,
You know,
absolutely.
your recommendation, but it's still us approving
That is
to
correct.
go ahead.
Yes.
Okay,
Asking for your approval. That's what the agenda item is. Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Is there any other board comment at this time? Okay, I'm going to open this up to the public. Please be sure to state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Do I have any public comment?
Hi, I'm Michelle Zrubeck with Cassie's Place. I'm the director over there. I have just a few informational questions to kind of maybe answer for the public as well as some of us that have not been in previous conversation or discussion of how this is playing out. I will agree I do believe that every rescue in the community, whether they're contracted through the city, 501c3 pending or whatnot, we all each have education, knowledge, and experience that can benefit the shelter no matter what. And I think we all play a huge part in the shelter's success that they have had over the past year. One question that I do want to ask is this $60,000 that will be staffing, and I know that it has kind of been touched on, and I understand that there's billets, but I think that as a public part of the community, billets, it may not be understood how that is taking place or how it's being used, and why $60,000 can be used into a contract with a 501c3 rather staffing under the city itself.
I'm going to ask staff to please answer that question for us.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Michelle. What exactly was your question? I was thinking of something I was writing. I heard 60,000 and some billets.
I understand that, like y'all's billets, you have certain billets that you can use. The $60,000, can you explain where that $60,000 cannot benefit the shelter as is using city staff and hiring on what you feel is experienced staff, or using that $60,000 to put your staff into training that may benefit? Because as we have heard through the public videos on the city page, some of the words are being unprofessional and things of that nature. Wouldn't it benefit your staff that you currently have to put them in the training that they deserve?
I want to clarify the whatever's been heard on the public.
No, the videos that have been recorded by the city.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
That's deeper than what was there, but by no means did anybody in management from me above claim that we were unprofessional and a professional service is going to be better than us in that capacity. I really am curious as to how good we were when this does take place. So I want the perception of that to be killed, because that was put out there, and it was a totally misstatement by the person that said it up to the people that are interpreting that. But let's go back to your original question. $60,000 better served to the current shelter right now. And a lot of people could say, well, why don't you use that to fix the plumbing? Well, first of all, it's way more than that to fix the plumbing. Second of all, when you hire an individual, let me just give you a number. A $27,000 paid employee for the city of San Angelo on salary is about a $38,000 expense. What you do is you take their salary and you multiply that by about 37.5%, which includes benefits, PARs, FICA, Social Security, retirement, blah, 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 blah. So all of a sudden, you're almost at 40 grand with a admin type of individual. Nothing against an admin type of individual, but when we look at this, I have the discretion internally to manipulate my budget however well I see fit. We have taken that budget and turned it completely into the safety, health, and welfare of the animal. And I'll give you an example. $26,000 in 14 was spent on food. Last year was $9,800. So my point is the $60,000 is in the current budget due to, there's not going to be surgeries performed there. So a chemical medical line doesn't need to be had like it was budgeted for. There is other areas that concern me from a financial standpoint of running that place that need to be cut. I'll give you an example. We've cut some trash service. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. So at the end of the day, I can control that. What I can't control is hiring more people than what was proposed by City Council at whatever time they proposed the number of billets for me to have. That has fluctuated, and we've even circumvented that a little bit in the capacity of part-time seasonal. again, through charter and through local laws, we do have the capability to implement people in that capacity that don't receive retirement. They receive a PARS, but they're not FICA and Social Security and everything else, and they are just part-time seasonal. I could have 30 of those people out there today. Problem is, they charge me to find it within my budget. And so we did that, i.e. the inmates back in the day. No one knew that that contract was $63,000 for them to clean. I did because I saw it. And I ended up getting people that we could account for in that capacity in the part-time seasonal, and I just took it from that same line.
And bottom line, though, is we do not get the billet, the position, freed up by keeping them trained. We can train them, we can do those kind of things, but we still don't have the position. The position that we want and we need to beef up the animal control won't be there. So that's why we're doing this. And again, we get 2 for 1, so it's a good buy, I think.
Okay. I know you brought up the vet and the money that was going to pay, I assume, his
Michelle,
salary.
can you make your comments to us, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And-
So as far as the vetting goes, and he had commented that the vet, part of that funding is going to go towards, could be used or transitioned into this contract. How does that play into the future? And I know that we discussed, or that was discussed a second ago, that the vet will be brought up at a future date. But what I'm understanding is that maybe a vet is not necessarily something being looked into for the next year.
That's not on our agenda and hasn't been discussed with us. So as per what she has told us before, if it's not on the agenda.
And I
can't talk
understand that.
about
It's
it,
just a question maybe to consider or think about putting on the agenda for a future date.
It's been on the deal, but unfortunately, this one was needed to be talked about sooner. So,
No, I understand.
Unfortunately, you're really asking questions that beyond the scope of this meeting, so you're going to have to, unfortunately, you're going to get a no answer.
Okay. What facility are y'all aware of that this is mimicking?
Like I said, sometimes there's things that we're not fully invested with, mainly because I actually do have a full-time job that in about 25 minutes I'm going to have appointments for. So on some of these, if you're wanting us to look into that, we can ask Bob to bring that up at the next meeting. But if you're asking questions that none of us have answers to, then I think it would be better if we actually put this as a proposal on the next meeting. Would that be fair to you?
Sure. So you want me to hold off on all of my questions? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, you're just you're asking questions that none of us have the appropriate response for. Instead of giving you answers that we have no information on, we're going to defer them, let the information be provided to us so that we can give you a better response. In the meantime, though, I mean, you're just going to get a bunch of blank and void answers and answers of things that have no value because they're coming from no information.
Well, and I think that that's probably the important part at this point, is that information isn't provided. And that's
if
why
you
I'm
would like
wanting
some
to ask
information
questions.
provided, we will ask for it to be provided in detail for our next meeting. But we don't have that information.
I
We
understand
did
that. That's why I'm up here
outline, we did
asking
outline
questions.
the requirements that we're asking for. There are no details in the contract yet, because there is no contract. So
That
it's
is the
for us
other
to get
thing
into the
here.
details, we can't provide you those details, because there are no details at this point.
Right, that comes next.
It's a
I
concept.
think the public comment period is intended for you to offer your opinion to them and not to kind of interrogate the board or the staff. And so if you want to like kind of sum up what your questions are in comments, that way they will know kind of what you're thinking, what direction you're heading.
Okay. So I feel that at this point, knowing and just kind of being a part of the community and a part of the rescue community itself, I feel that, some of the other rescues could really benefit in having this contract put together. I feel like it should be a cooperative effort rather than going under one, because I know as Cassie's Place, the director, I'm out there multiple times a week. I get a call almost every single day about an animal to come get it and pull it, and I take many animals in, and I feel like, there should be some communication as far as how this is going to be put in play.
Actually, as the RFP stated that in the previous part and was stated last meeting, there was actually the RFP, if you went and read it, which I did, you had to be required to be a 501c to do this, which was part of the RFP. The other part of the RFP and requirements, although not stated on this, actually requires and and strongly encourages the person that is managing the adoptions out of the shelter to communicate and coordinate all adoptions with all other rescue organizations locally. And that has been addressed and is actually written into the potential contract as requested by the RFP. So I don't understand why you're very concerned about this as it's already been addressed and stated in the RFP, which will be written into your proposal, which I'm assuming.
Well, and I believe the whole goal of this is to increase adoptions, right?
No, I agree, and I think that that's all of our
I mean,
goals.
we have to, I mean, this has to be a big community effort, you know, I mean, I feel like, you know, we definitely need all the rescues coming and taking and rehoming, so, I mean, you guys are all, you're part of making this a success.
Okay. I kind of feel like my questions are being pushed down, so I guess I will just step away and ask questions when they're appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other public comment at this time? Okay, do I have any more board discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the request for proposal to contract with local nonprofits to manage shelter animal adoptions?
I propose that we motion to do that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it is 12:57 and the meeting is adjourned.